The first time Liam asked if I could help with his little brother, I almost laughed. "Come on," he said over the phone. "You work from home 3 days a week. You actually know how to cook. He likes you." I'm desperate. I'm 26, not a babysitter. You're also my best friend. He knew exactly which argument would work. I sighed dramatically, even though he couldn't see me. How old is he now? 21. I blinked. Your little brother is 21? He'll always be my little brother. I laughed. Fair enough. Just help him settle in for a few weeks. I'm working double shifts because my boss quit. Mom's overseas with our aunt, Dad's on that construction project in another city. Axel's technically an adult, but he's never really had to manage things on his own. I still don't understand why you need me. Because he listens to you. That surprised me. I've spoken to him maybe 5 times. Exactly. He thinks you're cool. I nearly dropped my coffee. No one has ever described me as cool. Well, he does. There was a pause. So? I rubbed my forehead. How many weeks? 3. I should have said no. Instead, I heard myself answering. Fine. I'd known Liam since freshman year of college. We'd survived impossible professors, cheap apartments, terrible jobs, and exactly one disastrous road trip that ended with his car breaking down 300 miles from home. He was the closest thing I had to family. So helping him didn't feel like a burden. It felt normal. Even if I wasn't exactly sure what I was signing up for. Their house sat in a quiet neighborhood about 20 minutes from my apartment. Nothing fancy. Small front yard. Old basketball hoop over the garage. Flower beds Liam's mother took absurd pride in. I'd been there dozens of times. Usually for barbecue nights or football games. Usually when Axel disappeared after saying hello. That was my image of him. Quiet. Polite. Always somewhere upstairs. Always wearing headphones. Always looking younger than he actually was. When Liam opened the front door, he looked exhausted. You're a lifesaver. You've said that 3 times already? I'll probably say it 10 more. He stepped aside. The house looked strangely empty without their parents. Boxes of groceries sat on the kitchen floor. Laundry waited on the couch. The sink was full. You okay? I asked. No. At least you're honest. He laughed. I've basically been trying to be everyone's parent for 2 weeks. And Axel? He tries. That answer sounded strangely careful. What does that mean? Liam leaned against the counter. It means he's still figuring things out. Before I could ask more, footsteps came down the stairs. Axel appeared carrying a basket of clean towels. He froze when he saw me. Oh. Then he smiled. Hey, Noah. Hey. He looked different. Not dramatically. Just older than I remembered. Taller. Broader shoulders. His hair had grown longer, falling slightly over his forehead. He still had the same calm expression. Same quiet eyes. But the teenager I'd stored in my memory was gone. Liam convinced you? Axel asked. Apparently I have no backbone. That sounds accurate. Liam stared at both of us. You two are getting along already? We've always gotten along. We've barely talked. Liam pointed out. Axel shrugged. Doesn't mean we don't get along. It was such a simple answer that we both laughed. That afternoon mostly involved boring adult responsibilities. Sorting bills. Putting groceries away. Cleaning the garage. Liam kept apologizing. You don't have to do all this. Yes, I do. You really don't? You've helped me move apartments 4 different times. That was friendship. This is friendship. He couldn't argue with that. Axel quietly helped the entire time. No complaints. No disappearing upstairs. If something needed lifting, he picked it up. If dishes needed washing, they got washed. If Liam forgot something, Axel noticed before either of us did. It didn't fit the helpless picture Liam had painted. Around 6 in the evening, Liam's phone rang. His expression immediately changed. What? Pause. You're kidding. Longer pause. No, I'll come. He ended the call and looked miserable. My replacement didn't show. You have to work? Night shift. I looked toward the clock. You just got home. I know. He looked between me and Axel. I hate asking this. You're asking anyway. Yes. I smiled. Go. You're sure? I think we'll survive one evening. Liam looked at Axel. You good? Axel nodded. We're adults, remember? Barely. Still counts. Liam grabbed his jacket. You two order pizza. We can cook, I said. Both brothers looked at me. You cook? Axel asked. You sound shocked. I've only ever seen you burn burgers. That happened once. Liam laughed so hard he almost dropped his keys. It happened 4 times. They were difficult burgers. There is no such thing. 10 minutes later he was gone. The house suddenly felt much quieter. For a few moments neither of us spoke. Then Axel looked toward the kitchen. So? Can you actually cook? I grinned. You're about to find out. Cooking together wasn't planned. It just happened. I started taking vegetables out of the refrigerator. Axel silently grabbed a cutting board. Without discussing it, we fell into an easy rhythm. You cut surprisingly well, I said. My mom made sure everyone learned. She succeeded. He smiled slightly. You cook more than Liam. That's not difficult. He once ruined pasta. How? We still don't know. I laughed. He'll be thrilled we're discussing this behind his back. He deserves it. We worked in comfortable silence for another minute. Eventually Axel asked, So, how's work? Boring. Good boring? The best kind. What exactly do you do again? I explained my job. Unlike most people, he actually listened. Asked questions? Remembered details I'd mentioned years earlier. You remembered that? You talked about it at Liam's birthday. That was almost 2 years ago. You seemed excited. The answer caught me off guard. Most conversations disappear after they're over. Apparently mine hadn't. Dinner turned out surprisingly well. We ate outside because the weather was perfect. The evening sun painted everything orange. For a while we just enjoyed the quiet. Then Axel asked, Can I ask something? Sure. Why are you and Liam still friends? I laughed. That's an unexpected question. I mean it. I considered the answer. Because he's loyal. Axel nodded slowly. He is. And because he always shows up. For everyone. Exactly. Axel stared at his plate. He worries too much. He does. He thinks he has to fix everything. I smiled. You've noticed? He raised me. The sentence landed harder than he probably intended. Not because it sounded dramatic. Because it sounded true. I suddenly remembered something Liam had mentioned years earlier. Their parents had worked constantly. Extra shifts. Weekend jobs. Anything to keep the family comfortable. Which meant Liam had become the responsible one very early. School pickups. Homework. Doctor appointments. Apparently even now, years later, he couldn't stop. He's lucky, I said quietly. Axel looked up. To have someone who cares that much. A small smile appeared. He'd probably say the same about you. Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. A message from Liam. Everything okay? I smiled. Your brother hasn't burned the house down yet. 3 dots appeared immediately. Give him time. Axel glanced at my screen. Did he insult me? Yes. That sounds like Liam. We both laughed. And somewhere in that completely ordinary evening, something shifted. Not dramatically. Not romantically. Just enough for me to realize something unexpected. For the first time, I wasn't talking to Liam's little brother. I was talking to Axel. And somehow, those had quietly become 2 very different people. The next morning, I woke up to a text from Liam. Emergency. Can you stop by again tonight? I stared at the message. What happened? His reply came almost instantly. Nothing terrible. I just got called in for another double shift. You need to find a new job. Believe me, I know. I smiled despite myself. Fine. I'll come after work. 3 seconds later. You're saving my life. When I arrived that evening, Axel was sitting on the front porch with a laptop balanced on his knees. He looked up as I walked through the gate. You came. You sound surprised. I thought Liam exaggerated. He usually does. He said you'd probably cancel your own plans before saying no to him. I stopped halfway up the steps. That's a little too accurate. Axel closed the laptop. He knows you well. So do you, apparently. He shrugged. I pay attention. There it was again. That simple sentence. No awkwardness. No attempt to impress me. Just a quiet fact. For some reason, it stayed with me longer than it should have. Liam had already left for work. A note sat on the kitchen counter. Don't let Axel order burgers again. Below it, in different handwriting. Ignore him. I laughed. Which one of you wrote the second part? Axel raised his hand. I had to defend myself. Were the burgers really that bad? They weren't bad. He hesitated. They were just every meal for 4 days. I burst out laughing. That explains the note. It really does. Instead of cooking immediately, Axel asked, Want to see something? What? The garage. The garage? You'll understand. Curiosity won. Lead the way. The garage looked completely different from the last time I'd seen it. One side still held shelves full of tools. The other had become a workshop. Pieces of wood. Sketches pinned to the wall. Half-finished shelves. A workbench covered with carefully organized equipment. You built all this? Axel nodded. With Dad. I walked around slowly. Everything looked handmade. Not perfect. But solid. Real. You're good. I've had practice. He said it so casually that I almost missed how much work had clearly gone into everything around us. I stopped in front of a small coffee table. The edges were perfectly smooth. The finish looked professional. You made this? Last winter. You could sell these. He smiled. People keep saying that. You don't believe them? I don't know. You should. He looked away. That tiny reaction told me more than his words had. Lack of confidence. Not lack of ability. There was a difference. For the next hour, he showed me project after project. Each one better than the last. A bookshelf. A bench. Picture frames. Even a guitar stand. You've never posted any of this online? No. Why? He shrugged. Didn't seem important. It is important. To who? To anyone looking at it. He looked genuinely unconvinced. I leaned against the workbench. Axel. Yeah? You're talented. Silence. Then, quietly. Thanks. Not embarrassed. Not dismissive. Just grateful. Back inside, we finally started making dinner. Halfway through chopping onions, Axel suddenly laughed. What? I just remembered something. That sounds dangerous. You came to Liam's graduation. I did. You spent almost an hour helping me build a Lego spaceship. I blinked. You remember that? You probably don't. I honestly don't. He smiled. I was 13. That's why. What do you mean? I assumed you'd forgotten me 5 minutes later. His knife paused. You really thought that? You were Liam's little brother. And? I didn't think much beyond that. He was quiet for several seconds. I remembered. Something about the way he said those 2 words made me stop cutting vegetables. Not because there was hidden meaning. Because there wasn't. It was completely sincere. He remembered. That was all. Dinner stretched much longer than either of us expected. Somehow the conversation drifted from movies to travel to music to ridiculous childhood stories Liam would probably kill us for sharing. He really cried because Dad shaved his beard? I asked. Axel nodded with complete seriousness. For 3 days. I refuse to believe that. I have photos. You're bluffing. I absolutely am not. He disappeared upstairs. 2 minutes later he returned holding an old photo album. You're actually doing this. He started it. You're enjoying this. A little. The pictures were priceless. Liam missing front teeth. Liam wearing an enormous pirate costume. Liam looking absolutely devastated while standing next to his clean-shaven father. I laughed so hard my stomach hurt. He's going to disown both of us. Probably. Worth it. Definitely. Around 9 o'clock we moved into the living room. Rain had started outside. The windows rattled softly. Neither of us seemed in any hurry to leave the conversation. So, Axel asked, can I ask another question? I survived the first one. You've never moved away? What do you mean? You've lived here almost your whole life. I thought about it. I've had chances. But, I guess, everyone important stayed. He nodded thoughtfully. I understand that. You do? I've thought about leaving. And? My family is here. He looked toward the rain outside. So is Liam. That answer made perfect sense. Then he added, and now you're nearby too. The words came out naturally. Without hesitation. Without realizing how they sounded. His own eyes widened a fraction of a second later. I mean, you don't have to explain. I wasn't trying to. I know. A faint color appeared across his face. For the first time since I'd known him, Axel actually looked flustered. Oddly enough. It was kind of endearing. When I finally stood to leave, it was almost 11. You don't have to keep coming, Axel said while walking me to the door. Is that your polite way of getting rid of me? He laughed. No. Then what? I just don't want Liam making you feel responsible. He isn't. You're sure? I looked at him. I'm here because I want to help. He studied my face for a moment, as if deciding whether to believe me. Then he smiled. Okay. As I reached my car, he called after me. Noah? Yeah? Thanks. For what? For treating me like an adult. The sentence caught me completely off guard. I thought everyone did. He shook his head. Not really. I watched him for a second. Standing under the porch light. Hands in his pockets. Looking somehow older than 21, and younger at the same time. I'll see you tomorrow, I heard myself say. His smile widened. Tomorrow. Driving home, I turned the radio off. The silence felt strangely comfortable. I replayed the evening without meaning to. The workshop. The photographs. The easy conversation. The way time had disappeared without either of us noticing. It was unexpected. I'd agreed to help Liam. Instead, I was slowly getting to know someone I'd spent years overlooking simply because I'd filed him away as the younger brother. Now that label didn't seem to fit anymore. And somewhere in the back of my mind, a quiet thought appeared before I could stop it. Maybe Liam wasn't the only reason I kept agreeing to come back. Maybe. I was starting to look forward to seeing Axel. I told myself it was because we'd become friends. At that moment, I honestly believed that was the whole truth. By the end of the first week, helping Liam had quietly become part of my routine. Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Sometimes just dinner. Sometimes fixing something around the house. Sometimes doing absolutely nothing except sitting on the back porch with Axel while the evenings slowly disappeared. Liam kept thanking me. The funny thing was, it no longer felt like I was doing him a favor. One Thursday evening I arrived to find the front door wide open. Hello? In the backyard, Axel called. I walked through the house and stopped. Half the lawn was covered with pieces of wood. There were measuring tapes, clamps, and several boards laid out in neat rows. Axel looked up from a sketchbook. Perfect timing. That sounds suspicious. I need another pair of hands. For what? He held up the drawing. A garden bench. I studied the sketch. You designed this? He nodded. For Mom. Just because? She keeps saying she wants somewhere to drink coffee outside. That explains the measurements. She'll be home next week. So you're building it before she gets back. That's the plan. I smiled. I guess I'm helping. I was hoping you'd say that. Building something with another person is strange. Conversation comes in pieces. A few minutes of work. A few minutes of talking. Then silence again. It never feels awkward. Just shared. You've done this before? Axel asked as I held the board steady. My grandfather taught me a little. He was into woodworking. He built boats. Axel stopped drilling. Seriously? Tiny fishing boats. That's incredible. He would have liked your workshop. The compliment made him smile without looking up. That means a lot. You never met him. I didn't have to. He tightened another screw. You talk about him like he was a good man. He was. I can tell. An hour later we took a break. Both of us were covered in sawdust. You have something, Axel said. Where? He pointed toward my hair. I brushed it away. Still there. I can't see it. He laughed. Hold still. For a second I assumed he was reaching for another towel. Instead he gently picked a tiny wood shaving off my shoulder. That one wasn't your hair. Oh. He held up the tiny piece of wood. There. The moment lasted maybe 2 seconds. Nothing more. Perfectly innocent. Still, for reasons I couldn't explain, I suddenly became very aware of how close he was standing. He stepped back immediately. Sorry. For what? I probably should have just told you. You saved me from looking ridiculous. I don't think you looked ridiculous. His answer came so naturally that neither of us reacted for a moment. Then he cleared his throat. So, lunch? I smiled. Lunch. While sandwiches were in the oven, Axel wandered into the living room. Can I show you something? You've asked me that 3 times this week. You always say yes. That's because now I'm curious. He disappeared upstairs. When he returned, he carried a worn notebook. This is embarrassing. Should I be worried? Maybe. He handed it over. Inside were dozens of sketches. Furniture. Rooms. Entire house layouts. Coffee shops. Bookshelves. Cabins in the woods. Every page filled with careful pencil drawings. I looked up. You did all these? Over the last few years. Axel. He immediately looked nervous. They're just ideas. They're really good. They're unfinished. So? They're not professional. I closed the notebook. Who convinced you they had to be? He frowned. No one. Someone did. He looked away. My architecture professor. You studied architecture? For 1 semester. What happened? I switched. Why? He said I wasn't creative enough. Silence settled between us. I opened the notebook again. Page after page. Carefully measured proportions. Creative little details. Thoughtful use of space. None of it looked unimaginative. I looked back at him. He was wrong. Axel laughed softly. You've only seen the good pages. How many bad ones are there? A lot. That's called learning. He didn't answer. Instead, he stared at the notebook like he'd never seen it before. You really think they're good? I think you're asking the wrong question. What question should I ask? Do you enjoy making them? His answer came instantly. Yes. Then don't let one professor decide whether you're creative. For several seconds he simply looked at me. Then he quietly said, No one's ever said it like that. Later that afternoon Liam called. How are my favorite people? You only have two options, I said. So technically you're both my favorites. Axel rolled his eyes. You're exhausting. I've been told. Liam sounded unusually cheerful. I actually get tomorrow off. Congratulations. So we'll all have dinner. That sounds nice. You're coming. That sounded less like an invitation. It wasn't. Axel laughed. He's ordering you. I'm noticing a pattern. You love us. I tolerate you. Same thing. After hanging up, Axel shook his head. He really does assume you'll say yes. He's spoiled. A little. You're defending him. I always defend him. You're a good brother. Axel looked toward the window. He deserves it. Friday evening felt almost like old times. Liam finally had a day off. He looked less exhausted than he'd been in weeks. The three of us ate outside. Conversation bounced from one ridiculous topic to another. Liam told embarrassing college stories. I corrected half of them. Axel laughed so hard he nearly dropped his drink. So Noah actually fell into the campus fountain? Axel asked. It was slippery. It was alcohol, Liam corrected. 1 drink. 3. 2. 4. I hate that you've kept count. I kept count because it was hilarious. Axel wiped tears from laughing. I wish I'd known you back then. You would have bullied me. Probably. I knew it. No, Axel said, smiling. I would have helped you out of the fountain first. Something about that answer made Liam grin. What? Liam looked between us. Nothing. That smile means something. It doesn't. It absolutely does. Liam stood to grab another drink. You two actually get along way better than I expected. Axel answered before I could. We always have. You barely knew each other. We're fixing that. Liam paused. His expression softened. You know. What? I think that's nice. The evening stretched later than usual. Eventually Liam went inside to answer another work call, leaving Axel and me alone on the patio. The air had cooled. Crickets filled the silence. Neither of us felt any need to speak immediately. Finally Axel asked, Can I tell you something stupid? Those are usually the best conversations. He smiled. When I was younger. How much younger? 16. Okay. I wanted to be like you. I stared at him. What? You had your own apartment. I rented a terrible apartment. You had your own life. I barely had enough money for groceries. You still looked confident. I laughed. I was terrified. You hid it well. I leaned back in the chair. I had absolutely no idea. You probably weren't supposed to. He smiled to himself. You always seemed like someone who knew where he was going. And now? He thought about it. Now I know you were figuring it out like everyone else. And is that disappointing? No. He shook his head. It actually makes me like you more. The sentence settled quietly between us. Simple. Honest. Completely free of hidden meaning. Yet for some reason, my chest felt unexpectedly warm. Liam came back outside before either of us spoke again. You two solving the world's problems? Mostly embarrassing yours, I answered. That sounds much more realistic. We laughed. But as the evening came to an end and I drove home once again, my thoughts kept circling one conversation. Not the jokes. Not the stories. Just one sentence. When I was younger, I wanted to be like you. It should have felt flattering. Instead, it left me wondering when exactly I'd stopped seeing Axel as Liam's younger brother, and started seeing him simply as Axel. I wasn't looking for an answer. But for the first time, I realized I had begun asking the question. The following week should have felt different. Liam's parents were coming home. His schedule was finally returning to normal. There was no longer any real reason for me to stop by several evenings a week. At least, that was the logical conclusion. Instead, on Monday afternoon, I caught myself wondering whether Axel had finished the garden bench. The realization made me stop typing in the middle of an email. I stared at my screen, then quietly muttered, "Oh, that's not good." Around 6 o'clock, my phone buzzed. "Liam, Mom says you have to come for dinner tomorrow." I smiled. "Does your mother know she invited me?" she specifically asked. A second message followed. Axel already told her about the bench. I blinked. He told her I helped? Apparently, he won't stop mentioning it. I read that sentence twice, then locked my phone before I could think too much about it. The next evening felt different the moment I walked through the front door. The house was alive again. Music in the kitchen. Someone laughing upstairs. The smell of fresh bread. Liam's mother hugged me before I had both shoes off. "There you are! Good to see you too. You've been taking care of my boys. They're adults. That has never stopped me from worrying." "That sounds familiar." She pointed toward the living room. "You learned that from Liam." "I absolutely did." Her laugh filled the entire hallway. Liam's father appeared carrying a toolbox. "Noah. Welcome home. Liam tells me you've been keeping the place standing." "I mostly supervised." "That sounds believable." He smiled. "Come outside." The garden bench stood beneath a large maple tree. Finished. Painted. Beautiful. His father slowly walked around it, ran one hand across the smooth wood, then looked at Axel. "You made this?" Axel nodded. "For Mom." Silence. Then his father quietly said, "I'm proud of you." No dramatic speech. No long emotional moment. Just 6 simple words. I watched Axel's expression change. Only slightly. But enough. Enough to know he'd wanted to hear those words for a long time. Dinner was loud. Everyone talked over everyone else. Liam exaggerated stories. His mother corrected them. His father pretended not to laugh. Axel mostly listened. Exactly as I'd always remembered. Except, now I noticed something new. Whenever he did speak, everyone listened. Not because he was loud. Because he rarely wasted words. There was a quiet confidence in him I'd somehow missed before. Or maybe it hadn't existed until recently. After dinner, Liam disappeared upstairs to answer another phone call. His parents started unpacking gifts from their trip. I carried empty plates toward the kitchen. "So do you always clean up at other people's houses?" Axel had appeared beside me. "Only the houses that feed me." "That seems fair." We worked side by side without speaking. The silence wasn't uncomfortable anymore. It had become familiar. "So," he said eventually. "So? What happens now?" I looked at him. "What do you mean?" "You don't have to keep coming over." There it was. The question I'd been quietly avoiding myself. "I guess. I don't." He nodded once. "Right." Something about the way he said it made the room feel unexpectedly quiet. I set another plate into the dishwasher. "You make it sound like you want me to disappear." His head came up immediately. "No." The answer came much too quickly. "I didn't mean that." "I know." He rubbed the back of his neck. "I just..." He searched for the words. "I got used to seeing you." The honesty in his voice left no room for misunderstanding. I smiled. "I got used to seeing you too." His shoulders relaxed. "Just a little. That makes me feel better." "It should." Before I left that night, Liam walked me to my car. "You've done more than you know." "What happened?" He leaned against the fence. "Axel's different." "How?" "He laughs more." I looked back toward the house. Through the window I could see Axel helping his mother unpack souvenirs. "He's always laughed." "Not like this." Liam folded his arms. "You know what he told me yesterday?" "What?" "He said he finally feels like someone sees him." The words landed heavily. "What did you say?" I asked what he meant. "And?" He just shrugged. Liam smiled. But I think I know. I wasn't sure what to say. Fortunately, he changed the subject. You're still coming over this weekend. That wasn't a question. No. I noticed. Saturday morning, my phone rang. It was Axel. I stared at the screen for several seconds before answering. Hey. Hi. A pause. I hope I'm not bothering you. You're not. I actually needed some advice. About what? My workshop. You're building something? I want to. What do you need? Can you come over? I laughed. You know you could have just asked. So that's a yes? Give me 40 minutes. Thanks. His voice sounded genuinely relieved. When the call ended, I caught myself smiling again. I really needed to stop doing that. The project turned out to be much simpler than I'd expected. Axel wanted to redesign the workshop. More shelves. Better lighting. A larger workbench. We spent almost the entire afternoon measuring walls and moving furniture. At one point, while balancing on a ladder, I lost my footing. Whoa! Before I could recover, Axel caught my arm instinctively. You okay? Yeah. He didn't let go immediately. Just long enough to make sure I was steady. Then he stepped back. Sorry. You apologize too much. So does Liam. That's definitely genetic. He laughed. You're probably right. Later we sat on the garage floor surrounded by sketches. You know, I said. What? You're really serious about this? The workshop? No. The furniture. He looked down at one of his drawings. I've been thinking. About? Starting a business. I smiled. Now we're talking. His expression became uncertain. You really think it's possible? I think you'll regret it if you never try. He was quiet. Then asked, would you be honest if you thought I couldn't do it? Yes. You wouldn't just encourage me? No. He nodded slowly. Good. Another pause. I trust your opinion. For simple words. They shouldn't have affected me. Instead, they stayed in my head long after he said them. Because trust isn't given casually. It's earned. And somewhere along the way, without either of us noticing, we'd earned each other's. That evening, as I drove home, my sister called. You've disappeared. I've been busy. With Liam? And his family. She was quiet for a moment. Then casually asked, and his brother? My hands tightened slightly on the steering wheel. What about him? You've mentioned him 3 times today. I have not. You absolutely have. I frowned. I was telling stories. You're making something out of nothing. Maybe. She laughed softly. Just be careful. With what? With your own heart. The line went quiet. After we hung up, I drove the rest of the way home without turning the radio on. Because for the first time, someone else had said out loud the thought I'd been refusing to examine, and I wasn't ready to admit how much it unsettled me. After my sister's phone call, I told myself I was overthinking everything. She didn't know Axel. She didn't know the situation. She'd heard a few stories and reached a dramatic conclusion because that's exactly what older sisters do. I repeated that explanation several times over the next few days. It worked. Right up until Wednesday. Around lunchtime, my phone buzzed. Axel busy? I smiled before I even opened the message. That alone should have told me something. Not really. Why? A few seconds later. Can I ask your opinion on something? Sure. A photo appeared. One of the coffee tables from his workshop. Except this time it looked finished. Professional. Beautiful. The lighting. The finish. The proportions. Everything looked better than before. Thinking about putting this online, I stared at the picture for nearly a minute. Then typed exactly what I thought. Someone is going to buy this. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. You really think so? Yes. Another pause. Would you help me write the description? I laughed quietly. Absolutely. That evening we spent almost 2 hours at my apartment. Not at his house. Mine. It was the first time Axel had ever been there. He stood in the doorway looking around. This is exactly how I imagined it. That sounds slightly creepy. He laughed. I mean, it looks organized. You expected less? I expected more books. You're judging my shelves already? A little. You've been here 12 seconds. I stand by my opinion. Writing an online listing should have taken 15 minutes. Instead, we somehow ended up discussing everything except furniture. Business names, logos, photography, marketing, future ideas. You've really thought about this, I said. For years. So why now? He looked at the laptop screen. Because someone finally convinced me it wasn't stupid. I knew exactly who he meant. I pretended not to. Well, I'm glad they did. So am I. Around 8. I ordered takeout. You didn't have to. I was hungry. You're feeding me because I'm helping? I'm feeding you because you'll probably forget to eat otherwise. He looked surprised. How did you know? I pointed toward him. You've been working for 3 hours. So? You haven't once mentioned food. He laughed. Liam says the same thing. Then Liam is correct. You're starting to sound alike. I smiled. That should worry both of us. After dinner, we carried the empty containers into the kitchen. You know, Axel said quietly. What? I don't think I've ever thanked you properly. You've thanked me plenty. No. He shook his head. I mean for everything. I leaned against the counter. Everything? You've changed a lot of things. I frowned. I don't think I have. You really don't see it? See what? He thought for a long moment before answering. I used to second-guess everything. He smiled faintly. Every drawing. Every project. Every decision. And now? I still second-guess myself. He laughed softly. Just less. The kitchen became very quiet. You believed in me before I did. I didn't know what to say. Because the truth was, I hadn't done anything extraordinary. I'd simply told him what I'd honestly seen. Apparently that had mattered more than I'd realized. When he left that night, I stood at my apartment window watching him walk toward his car. Not intentionally. I simply didn't move. My phone buzzed a minute later. Axel, thanks again. I replied almost immediately. Good luck with the listing. His answer came back before I reached the couch. I wasn't talking about the listing. I looked at the screen for a long time. Eventually I typed, Good night, Axel. His final message made me smile. Good night, Noah. Saturday afternoon, Liam invited me over for what he described as a completely normal barbecue. It was, naturally, anything but normal. Half the neighborhood seemed to be there. Friends. Cousins. Old family friends. Children running through the yard. Music playing somewhere inside. You survived, Liam announced as soon as I arrived. I almost turned around. You wouldn't. No. I know. He grinned. You're predictable. I spent the first hour talking with Liam's father about work. Then helping his mother carry food outside. Eventually I noticed Axel across the yard. He was showing someone pictures on his phone. People gathered around him. Smiling. Asking questions. What are they looking at? I asked Liam. The furniture. How's it going? Liam's grin widened. He sold the table. I looked toward Axel again. When? This morning. Already? 1 customer? 3. I couldn't hide my smile. He did it. I think you helped. No. Liam shook his head. You definitely did. A little later, Axel finally walked over. You heard? I heard. He looked happier than I'd ever seen him. I actually sold them. I know. It doesn't feel real. It will after the first payment. He laughed. Probably. For a moment we simply stood there smiling at each other. Until Liam interrupted. This is getting suspicious. We both looked at him. What? You're smiling at each other like idiots. I smile at everyone. No, Liam said. You absolutely don't. Axel rolled his eyes. You're impossible. Correct. Liam wandered away before either of us answered, leaving behind a silence that suddenly felt different. You know, Axel said. He's going to keep doing that. Doing what? Teasing. He's your brother. He enjoys embarrassing people. He definitely enjoys embarrassing me. He enjoys embarrassing everyone. We both laughed. But the joke lingered longer than it should have. Because for the first time, I wondered whether Liam was noticing something that neither Axel nor I had been willing to name. As the sun started setting, people gradually headed home. The yard became quieter. Liam disappeared inside to help clean. His parents followed. Without realizing it, Axel and I ended up alone near the new garden bench. He sat down first. I joined him. This is the first time Mom's actually used it, he said. She loves it. She cried. I noticed. I wasn't expecting that. She was proud. He nodded. I think Dad was too. He definitely was. Silence settled comfortably between us. After a while, Axel spoke again. Can I tell you something? Of course. I almost didn't post that table. Really? I had the photos ready. The description. Everything. He looked down at his hands. And then I almost deleted all of it. Why? I kept hearing that professor's voice. I felt my chest tighten. He was wrong then. I know. He looked at me. For the first time, I actually believed he was wrong. There was something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Not admiration. Not gratitude. Something quieter. Deeper. It made holding his gaze unexpectedly difficult. I looked away first. Driving home later that night, I admitted something to myself that I'd been avoiding for weeks. I was no longer visiting Liam's house because Liam was my best friend. That had been true in the beginning. It wasn't true anymore. Now, I found myself looking forward to conversations with Axel, wondering what project he was working on, checking whether he'd sent another photo, smiling whenever his name appeared on my phone. None of those things were accidental. And for the first time, I stopped asking myself if something had changed. Instead, I started wondering what I was supposed to do about it. For the next few days, I kept my distance. Not dramatically. I didn't ignore Axel. I answered his messages. I liked the photos he sent of another custom table. I even congratulated him when he got a fourth order. But I stopped inventing reasons to stop by Liam's house. Mostly because I needed to know something. Was I simply enjoying a new friendship? Or was I beginning to cross a line I had never intended to approach? The answer, unfortunately, didn't arrive the way I expected. 3 days passed without seeing him. On the fourth evening, Liam called. You alive? Last time I checked. You've disappeared. I've been working. You've also declined 2 invitations. I've been busy. There was a pause. Then Liam laughed. You're terrible at lying. I wasn't lying. You're hiding something. I leaned back in my chair. What makes you think that? Because every time something's bothering you, you suddenly become the busiest man in America. I didn't know I had a pattern. You absolutely do. I changed the subject before he could keep digging. How's work? He sighed dramatically. I hate that you noticed. The conversation ended without him pushing further. Still, his words stayed with me. You're hiding something. Maybe I was. Mostly from myself. Saturday morning, there was another knock at my apartment door. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened it, Axel stood there holding 2 paper cups of coffee. I hope this isn't weird. I blinked. A little. He looked horrified. I mean, not bad weird. He laughed in obvious relief. I was about to leave. Don't. I stepped aside. Come in. This place looks different, he said. I cleaned. You always clean. I cleaned more. He looked around suspiciously. Are you expecting someone? I wasn't. So you cleaned for no reason? I sighed. When you say it like that, it sounds slightly concerning. We both laughed. He handed me one of the coffees. I was nearby. No, you weren't. He smiled. I absolutely wasn't. So why are you here? He hesitated. Then shrugged. I wanted to see you. The sentence arrived so naturally that neither of us reacted immediately. Then I quietly said, You could have just texted. I almost did. What changed? I figured, maybe seeing someone is better than reading words on a screen. I looked at him for a long moment. I think you're right. We spent most of the morning assembling a bookshelf I'd ordered weeks earlier. Halfway through, Axel held up 2 identical pieces. These go where? I studied the instructions. No idea. So the instructions are useless? They're inspirational. He laughed. That bad? They skip 6 steps. I respect the confidence. So do I. After several failed attempts, we finally figured it out. Axel leaned back against the wall. We're never becoming professional furniture builders together. I think we'd go bankrupt. Immediately. When the shelf was finally standing, he looked surprisingly satisfied. You know what? What? I like your apartment. You've said that already? I mean, it feels lived in. I looked around. Books. Plants. A guitar I'd barely played anymore. A blanket thrown carelessly across the couch. I guess it does. It feels calm. The words sounded strangely personal. That's a compliment. It is. Around lunchtime, we ordered sandwiches. While waiting for delivery, Axel wandered toward the bookshelf. His eyes stopped on a framed photograph. Liam and I. College graduation. Both of us looking impossibly young. You've known him forever. Feels like it. You know. He smiled to himself. I used to be jealous. I looked over. Of me? A little. I laughed. Why? Because Liam always came home talking about you. I blinked. He did? All the time. What did he say? Axel shrugged. That you were funny. That you never gave up. That you always helped people. He smiled faintly. I remember thinking. He stopped. What? I hope I meet someone like that one day. The room suddenly felt much quieter. You were 13, I said. I know. I wasn't exactly impressive. You were to me. There was no flirtation in his voice. No hidden meaning. Just an old memory being shared honestly. And somehow, that made it even harder to hear. After lunch, we took a walk through a nearby park. The weather was perfect. Families filled the walking paths. Someone played guitar near the lake. For a while, neither of us spoke. Finally, Axel broke the silence. Can I ask you something? You've earned enough questions by now. He smiled. Have you ever regretted not doing something? I thought about it. Yes. What? Waiting. For what? Different things. Jobs. Trips. People. He looked at me carefully. People? I nodded. Sometimes you convince yourself you'll have another chance. And then? Sometimes you do. And sometimes? You don't. He was quiet after that. Almost thoughtful. We found an empty bench overlooking the water. Axel leaned forward, elbows resting on his knees. I've been thinking a lot lately. That sounds dangerous. A little. He laughed. About growing up. You're 21. I know. But it feels different now. How? I don't feel like someone's little brother anymore. The words caught my attention immediately. I've noticed. You have? Yes. He looked genuinely curious. When? I smiled to myself. I don't know. That isn't an answer. No, it isn't. I looked out across the lake. Maybe, when you stop trying to prove yourself. He frowned slightly. I used to do that. All the time. To you? To everyone. And now? Now you just are? He didn't answer for several seconds. Then he quietly said, I think you're the reason. I looked at him. No. I am. He met my eyes. You were the first person who looked at something I'd made, and talked about what it could become. His voice remained calm. You never treated me like I was just Liam's younger brother. The irony hit me immediately. Because that's exactly how I treated him for years. I did, I admitted. He frowned. When? For a long time. And then? I smiled. And then I actually got to know you. Something changed in his expression. A quiet warmth. Not excitement. Not surprise. Just happiness. That evening, as we walked back toward the parking lot, our conversation slowed. Neither of us seemed eager for the day to end. When we reached our cars, Axel stayed where he was. So? Thanks. For today? For all of it. I smiled. You're making this sound very dramatic. It feels important. His honesty had become almost disarming. You know, he said. I was really nervous this morning. About showing up. He nodded. I thought maybe you'd say you were busy. I almost was. His smile faded just a little. Then I added, but I'm really glad I wasn't. The smile returned. Stronger this time. So am I. That night I couldn't sleep. Not because anything extraordinary had happened. Nothing had. We built a bookshelf. Walked through a park. Talked about life. It was ordinary. Completely ordinary. And somehow, that was exactly what frightened me. Because somewhere between shared meals, unfinished furniture, quiet conversations, and easy laughter, I'd stopped looking forward to seeing Axel because he reminded me of Liam. I looked forward to seeing him because he had quietly become one of my favorite parts of the week. And once I admitted that to myself, I knew pretending otherwise wasn't going to work much longer. The next week began with an uncomfortable realization. Avoiding my feelings hadn't changed them. It had only made me think about them more. Every message from Axel still made me smile. Every conversation still felt effortless. The only difference was that now I was painfully aware of it. And there was one problem I couldn't ignore. Liam. I'd known him for nearly 8 years. He had trusted me with his family, with his home, with the person he cared about most. The idea of hurting him sat like a weight in my chest. So I did the only thing that made sense. I decided I needed distance. Real distance. For almost 10 days, I barely saw Axel. Work became a convenient excuse. Then an actual deadline appeared, making the excuse believable. Our conversations became shorter. Instead of spending evenings together, we exchanged quick messages. Axel, hope work isn't killing you. Me, it might be. Axel, eat something. Me, yes, Mom. A minute later. Axel, that's Liam's job. I laughed despite myself. Then put the phone down before I could keep the conversation going. On Friday evening, Liam called. You're impossible. What did I do now? You vanished again. I've been working. You really haven't. What? I stopped by your office. I frowned. Why? To kidnap you for dinner. You're unbelievable. I know. There was a short silence. Then his voice became more serious. Did something happen? No. You're sure? Yes. Another pause. I miss hanging out. The simple honesty in his voice made me feel unexpectedly guilty. I miss it too. So come tomorrow. I'll think about it. No. He laughed. You'll come tomorrow. I did. mostly because saying no another time would have looked suspicious. The house felt familiar the moment I walked in. Liam was arguing with his father about football. His mother was baking something. Music drifted in from the kitchen. Everything felt comfortably ordinary. Until I looked toward the backyard. Axel was sanding another table. He looked up. Our eyes met. For just a second. Then he smiled. Not the wide grin I'd become used to. A smaller one. Warmer somehow. It shouldn't have affected me. It absolutely did. You're late, Liam announced. I know. You owe everyone dessert. That doesn't even make sense. It doesn't have to. His mother pointed toward the kitchen. Ignore him. I usually do. Smart man. The afternoon unfolded exactly as family afternoons usually do. People talked over each other. Someone burned garlic bread. Liam blamed his father. His father blamed the oven. His mother blamed both of them. Axel quietly fixed the problem without saying a word. I noticed. Apparently so did everyone else. See? Liam's mother smiled. He always rescues us. Axel shrugged. It wasn't difficult. His father laughed. You've been saying that since you were 10. Later, Liam disappeared to help a neighbor move furniture. His parents drove into town to pick up supplies. Without planning it, Axel and I ended up alone again. He was sanding the edge of another coffee table. You're getting faster. He looked up. I've had practice. How many orders now? 7. I smiled. I told you. You did. He brushed sawdust from the tabletop. I still don't believe it sometimes. You should. He looked at me for a long moment. You always sound so certain. Because I am. He smiled quietly. I like hearing that. I picked up a sanding block. Need help? You don't have to. I know. He handed me another piece of wood. For several minutes, only the sound of sandpaper filled the workshop. Then Axel suddenly asked, Did I do something wrong? I looked over immediately. What? You've been different. There it was. The conversation I'd hoped to avoid. I've just been busy. He gave me a look that reminded me very much of Liam. I don't think that's it. I sighed softly. You're persistent. I learned from my brother. That explains everything. He smiled. But it faded almost immediately. I miss talking to you. The honesty in those 5 words hit harder than I expected. I miss talking too. Then why did you disappear? I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. Because I couldn't exactly tell him the truth. I disappeared because somewhere along the way I started looking at you differently, and that scared me. Instead, I settled for something smaller. I've had a lot on my mind. He studied my face. Then nodded. You don't have to tell me. No? Not until you're ready. His answer made something tighten painfully in my chest. Because he wasn't pushing. He wasn't demanding explanations. He was simply giving me space. That evening, after everyone else returned, we all ate dinner together. Conversation flowed easily again. Liam spent 10 minutes complaining about work. His father offered terrible advice. His mother rolled her eyes. Everyone laughed. For a while, I almost convinced myself everything was normal. Then, while clearing the table, Liam casually threw an arm around my shoulders. You know what? What? You've basically become family. The sentence froze me for half a second. You realize Mom likes you more than me now. She absolutely does not. She absolutely does. His mother called from the kitchen. Everyone laughed. Including me. But inside, those words echoed much louder than anyone realized. You've basically become family. I glanced across the room. Axel happened to look up at the same moment. Neither of us smiled this time. Neither of us looked away immediately either. There was something unspoken in that brief moment. Not a confession. Not even an acknowledgement. Just 2 people quietly realizing that things had become more complicated than either of them had planned. Driving home that night, I finally admitted one undeniable truth. This wasn't a passing crush. It wasn't simple admiration. It wasn't just enjoying someone's company. Somewhere between helping Liam, building furniture, sharing ordinary afternoons, and watching Axel slowly believe in himself, I'd fallen for him. Completely. Quietly. Without ever meaning to. The realization should have brought relief. Instead, it left me with one impossible question. If Liam was my best friend, what happened next? For 2 days, I avoided making any decisions. Not because I didn't know what I felt. I knew. That wasn't the problem anymore. The problem was figuring out what the right thing looked like. Every possible choice seemed capable of hurting someone. Liam. Axel. Maybe all three of us. Tuesday evening, my phone buzzed. Axel, are you free? I stared at the message for almost a minute, then answered. Yeah. His reply came immediately. Can we talk? Something about those 3 words made my heart start racing. Of course. We met at the small park near my apartment. The same one we'd walked through a few weeks earlier. It was nearly empty. The sun was beginning to set. Axel was already there when I arrived, hands in his jacket pockets, looking more nervous than I'd ever seen him. Hey! Hey! For a moment neither of us knew how to begin. Finally he smiled weakly. I've rehearsed this conversation about 50 times. I don't think rehearsals ever help. They really don't. We both laughed. The laughter disappeared almost immediately. I know you've been avoiding me. His voice wasn't accusing. Just honest. I have. Was it something I did? No. You're sure? Yes. He nodded slowly. Then it's something I don't know. I looked down at the ground. It is. Silence settled between us. Then Axel quietly asked, Can I tell you something before you explain? I looked up. Of course. He took a slow breath. I think I've been looking forward to seeing you every day. My chest tightened. I started noticing it a while ago. He smiled faintly. Whenever something good happened, I wanted to tell you first. When I finished a project, I wondered what you'd think. When I had a bad day, I wanted to hear your voice. He laughed nervously. I kept telling myself it was because we'd become friends. He met my eyes. I don't think that's the whole truth anymore. For several seconds neither of us spoke. Then I quietly said, It isn't for me either. He closed his eyes for a moment, almost like he'd been holding his breath. You too? Yes. The word came out barely above a whisper. I tried convincing myself it would pass. So did I. I stopped coming over. I noticed. I thought distance would fix it. He smiled sadly. It didn't. No. It really didn't. We stood there in silence again. Neither of us moved closer. Neither of us looked away. Finally Axel asked the question we'd both been avoiding. What about Liam? There it was. The hardest part. I nodded slowly. He deserves honesty. Yes. I don't want him feeling betrayed. Neither do I. Axel looked toward the lake. He's my brother. I know. He's your best friend. I know. Another long silence. Then Axel surprised me. I won't do this behind his back. I looked at him. What? If this means something. I don't want it to start with hiding. Those words settled deeply inside me. Because they were exactly what I'd hoped he would say. I agree. He smiled. I thought you might. The conversation with Liam happened 2 evenings later. I don't think I'll ever forget it. He opened the front door. You look nervous. I am. That usually means you've done something stupid. Hopefully not. He frowned. Okay, now I'm worried. We sat on the back porch. The same place where we'd shared hundreds of conversations over the years. For several minutes I couldn't find the words. Liam eventually broke the silence. Is this about Axel? I looked at him in complete surprise. You knew? He laughed quietly. No. I guessed. When? You're both terrible at hiding things. I blinked. Seriously? He nodded. You kept finding reasons to come over. Then suddenly you stopped. He smiled. And my little brother looked disappointed every single time. I rubbed my face. We thought we were being subtle. You really weren't. I finally told him everything. Not every tiny thought. Just the truth. That nothing had happened while I was helping him. That I hadn't expected any of this. That I'd tried to ignore it. That Axel and I had talked. And that neither of us wanted to hurt him. When I finished, Liam stayed quiet for a long time. Long enough that I started imagining the worst. Finally he spoke. Can I ask one question? Anything. Do you care about him? I answered without hesitation. Yes. He nodded. Does he care about you? Yes. Another long silence. Then he leaned back in his chair. You know what's funny? What? I spent years hoping someone would see Axel the way I always did. I frowned. He's always been incredible. I just worried no one else noticed. He smiled softly. I guess I was wrong. My throat tightened. Liam. He interrupted me. If you hurt him, I'll never forgive you. I understand. And if he hurts you, he laughed, I'll deal with him. Despite everything. I laughed too. A week later, nothing about life looked dramatically different. There were no grand declarations. No impossible coincidences. No perfect ending. Just honesty. Axel and I started spending time together openly. Slowly. Carefully. Liam complained every time we agreed with each other. His mother pretended not to notice the smiles she definitely noticed. His father simply said, I was wondering how long it would take. Apparently everyone had figured it out before we had. One Saturday afternoon, months later, I found Axel working in the workshop again. Only now it looked completely different. New shelves. Professional tools. Orders stacked neatly on a desk. His small business had grown more than either of us expected. He looked up as I walked in. You're late. By 3 minutes. I noticed. I knew you would. He smiled. So? Want to see the new design? Always. He handed me another sketchbook. Another idea. Another dream becoming real. I looked at him instead of the page. You know. What? The first time Liam asked me to help take care of his little brother. Axel groaned dramatically. Don't. I honestly thought I was doing him a favor. He laughed. I know. I never imagined. He smiled before I finished. I know. There was a quiet understanding between us now. Built not on dramatic moments, but on dozens of ordinary ones. Shared dinners. Wood shavings on the garage floor. Long conversations. Coffee. Sketchbooks. Laughter. Trust. Sometimes love doesn't arrive all at once. Sometimes it grows so quietly that you don't recognize it until one ordinary day. You realize the person beside you has already become home. And looking back, I still smile at the irony. Liam asked me to help his little brother find his footing. Neither of us expected that, somewhere along the way, I'd finally see Axel for exactly who he'd become. And that would quietly change both of our lives forever.